In the second video, we cover requirements. Everything you need to operate Arc. There are 6 requirements. We will talk about 5 requirements now, and after a quick demo on the portal, we will complete the 6th requirement, which is the network connectivity. To get detailed information on all these requirements, visit the link below. Let's dive into these requirements. First requirement: what environments are supported by Arc? We can deploy Arc agent on physical servers as well as on virtual machines hosted outside Azure, including VMs running on VMware, Azure Local, and other cloud environments. This reminds us that we cannot deploy Arc on virtual machines on Azure, as they already have the resources brought via Arc. Arc is supported on Windows and Linux for 64 bits. There is no support for 32 bits operating systems. And if you are considering onboarding any machine running on ARM 64 bits, check the link below for availability. Arc is supported on Windows and Linux 64 bits. There is no support for 32 bits operating systems. And if you are considering onboarding any machine running on Arc 64, check the link below. When deploying the Arc agent, the metadata service will run under a low-privilege virtual account, NT. When deploying the Arc agent, the metadata service will run under a low-privilege account, NT service, Hybrid Instance Metadata Service, abbreviated to HIMDS. This account requires logon as a service permission in Windows. Usually this is granted by default unless your company uses group policy that prevents that. Require permissions on Azure. If you have ownership or contributor roles on that subscription, these roles provide all you need. In case you don't have membership into these roles, then the contents of this URL show what is needed. To onboard machines, you need Azure Connected Machine Onboarding. To read, modify, or delete machine, you need Azure Connected Machine Resource Administrator. And to select a resource group from the drop-down list, you need Reader on that resource group. An Azure Resource Provider is a set of REST operations that support functionality for a specific Azure service. The resource provider defines the Azure resources you can deploy to your account. Some resource providers are registered by default, but Arc requires specific resource providers to enable hybrid functionality. This URL describes resource providers and how to set them up. Let's see this in practice. Now that you know about the 5 requirements, let's navigate into the Azure portal to see in action how to review and add resource providers before we go to the final requirement, which is the network. Let's see the management of resource providers on the actual portal. Let's go Home, Subscriptions. Now that I have a list of subscriptions, I'll click on My Subscription. Now, on that particular subscription, let's see the settings. And now we can go to resource providers. This panel shows all resource providers, whether registered or not, to your subscription. You can filter them by name or status. So we can see here our status. I can click and filter just for those registered. Or I can leave all. And I can type the resource provider name. And you can see the first one, hybrid compute, is already deployed, is already registered. Let's go to the second one. Guest configuration is already deployed. Next one is hybrid connectivity, already registered. And last but not least, Azure Arc Data, which is already registered. If you are not on this part of the portal, we can go to the menu and click Home. As the home page is displayed, we go to Subscriptions. When all subscriptions are listed, you click on your subscription. This will open up your subscription. Now let's go to Settings, which is already open. And then you go to Resource Providers. When the resource providers are listed at the canvas, we can filter the resource providers by its name, by status, or registration policy. So let's take a look how to do that. Right now we have all status visible. I can click here and I can see those that are registered. Select register, apply, and these then filter by all the resource providers that are registered. Let's go back to all. And we have 4 resource providers to validate if they are already configured or not. So the first one is hybrid compute. Just by typing partial name, I can see hybrid compute is here as registered. And there is another one called hybrid connectivity, which is already registered. So 2 of those are already registered. I can clear the filter and type the next one, guest configuration. So you don't need to type the full name, partial name is okay. And you can see guest configuration is already registered. The fourth one is Azure Arc Data. And we can see Azure Arc Data is already registered. So in my subscription, I already have them set up. Probably on your subscription, you don't have that. So how you do? You find the resource provider you need to register, and I'll just click one here. And basically, as you select, you just go here and click on register. This will take some time, and then it gets registered for your subscription. Now, let's do this using Cloud Shell. To open Cloud Shell, you click on the Cloud Shell icon at the toolbar. So the first command I'll be typing here is to show all resource providers available on Azure. So get AZ resource provider dash list available. You list all the resource providers. And as you can see, it's a very big list, like we are seeing on the portal before. Not very useful, because then we need to figure out in this result set which ones we want to look for. Let's use now the same commandlet, get AZ resource provider, but now we're going to pipe that to a filter, asking to get only those resource providers that are registered. And we can see the list of those registered here. So we can go and look that Azure Arc is here, hybrid compute is here, hybrid connectivity is here. Also good, but not very efficient. So I will show. So if I use get AZ resource provider and pass a parameter, the provider name, and separated via comma each one of the provider name, I can see only those that I want. So I passed here Azure Arc data, guest configuration, hybrid compute, and hybrid connectivity. And then you can see the result that Azure Arc data is registered, guest configuration is registered, hybrid compute is registered, and connectivity is registered. If the resource provider is not registered in your subscription, you can use the commandlet register-az resource provider commandlet. Look online for that syntax. And if you want to use PowerShell or Azure CLI on the desktop, the commandlets will be very similar to what I have shown here on the Cloud Shell. The main difference is that before you execute those commandlets, you need to log on into the portal. So you can use AZ Connect or the equivalent on the CLI. Your experience will be very similar if you use PowerShell or Azure CLI on the desktop. The main difference is that using Cloud Shell via portal, you already logged into the portal. With PowerShell or Azure CLI, you need to connect to Azure before executing these commands. For instance, you can use AZ Login to connect with PowerShell before you execute these commands. Going back to the list of requirements, let's address now the connectivity from your machines into Azure. First, machines can connect to Azure using public link network. First, machines can connect to Azure using public network directly via proxy, Arc Gateway, or Azure Arc Private Link Scope. Second, the connectivity from each machine to Azure is only outbound. They use TCP port 433, and connections are encrypted via TLS 1.2 or 1.3. Last but not least, there is a list of URLs that need to be added to your company firewall to allow communication. The URL listed at the bottom of this page contain the URLs needed to be whitelisted. Thank you for watching. Last but not least, there is a set of URLs that need to be added to your company firewall to allow communication. The link at the bottom of this page contains the URLs to be whitelisted. Thank you for watching.